this episode of Heated Conversation, we have co-head coach Ryan Roberts and exquisite gymnastics coach Eric Cali. And we sat down during a camp where we were doing a high-tech camp in Baltimore. We started having this conversation about bar elements that they both would see that should come back that we don't see as often, as well as elements that should be worked on more. One thing that Ryan mentioned is that circles are a great tool to have because it gives so many options for bonus, both in the developmental program, but also in the elite world. Tune into this full episode, share it, like it, and have great conversations with peers about it. If you agree or disagree, leave your comments below. Let's tune into this episode with Ryan Roberts and Eric.
All right, so right now I have Eric Cali and Ryan Roberts on Heated Conversations. I was wondering, what are some bar elements that you feel have kind of disappeared in gymnastics that you think should kind of be resurrected?
I'll start. My preference and my favorite elements are the L grip type stuff. And it's not disappeared, obviously, but I think the emphasis has been a lot less on that because the code has been favoring the flights. Obviously, that's where we get in the combinations and getting our difficulty score. But now, new code going to be a bit worth back up to 2/10 connections for that. So those are my favorite elements, and they were my favorite elements to teach when I was developing elites because I think it's a super technical skill. It takes a lot of timing, takes a lot of prep work, a lot of patience, but I think they're really beautiful elements, and you can do a lot with them. I think we kind of got away from doing them because there's a conception that you can have shoulder issues from it, but it's like anything else. If you know how to do the physical prep work, then you can mitigate the injuries. There's risk involved in it, but I think it's less than what kind of there's a general idea that it's a relatively unsafe element where I believe that with proper physical preparation you can do these elements safely and with longevity. And then I think the other thing that we really need to be focusing on moving forward is knowing a lot of the circling elements. We might know one or two, but I really believe you should at least have 3 circling elements on bars. That's going to help you with your routine construction down the road. Really, if you have an excellent circle, you can do a turn, a flight, and a single bar release with that. So if you have 3 great circles, you're going to be able to have a much more ability to construct a routine regardless of the code. And the other thing is with the inside circles, the inside stalder, if you can master like the clear hip, the toe on the stalder, you're going to be able to get this inside stalder much easier. And obviously with the higher level difficulty, you can have higher level combinations this way. So that would be the 2 things I think for a trend that we should be going in that direction. And I've always thought too, like, if you can do like the men, it's a talk or a talk half, which is like a jam handstand ono basically. These are doable elements that I think we can do, and we should be moving forward to like evolve bars more, but we just don't train that much, but they're doable. We don't see them because we don't really train them, but these are things that we can be moving toward.
What about you, Eric?
Yeah, I think I agree with all those points, but on the development side, seeing the clear hip in particular all the way through handstand, I also agree with the multiple circles, but the strength and the timing that the clear handstand is going to give you to help you fly out of your toe hands and out of your stallers is going to be really beneficial. And I think we start isolating and doing 1 circle at a time versus maintaining all of your circles. I think the clear hip should be the foundation that you start with, and you add your toe hand, your staller. And also we're seeing that the endo is now upgraded, which is super valuable. It's worth training. It's a good drill for any front element. It's very valuable for all your shifting forward. And so I would add that as the 4th critical circle to maintain is the clear hip, the toe hand, the staller, and the endo. At least training it, whether you're competing or not, it's going to be valuable to you.
Now,
think the endo, to cap on that, sorry to interrupt, but I think the endo, much more pretty element than the Weiler kit. So you get the D, you get your undergrip for the elite code, and it's a better looking element than the Weiler kit, which a lot of people do for that reason. It's a D plus you get the undergrip. But I agree with the clear hip, I think, or the free hip. I think a lot of people just, toe hand's easier, so sometimes they learn the toe hand first. But the drop on a clear hip, like you said, the timing on it, you have to have to have a great free hip, you have to have a perfect drop. And that's where all the other circles follow. So you have one shape change and a clear hip. So that's more difficult on the timing. But then if you have that great drop, you add the shape change with the other circles, they're just that much easier and more powerful, more effective when you have a great clear hip. So 100% agree with that.
Now, for a majority of gymnastics is a developmental program, right? And so with these, how would you prep these athletes, and how much time do you also think it would take a week on average to really build all 3 or all 4 of these circles?
Well, that's a deep question. So like you're asking basically how much time to spend when you're developing. I mean, the ultimate goal is to be doing all of your routine really with circles, right? And we really don't need giants essentially. I mean, you need to tap, you need to learn how to tap, but if you get a circle 360, your release and your single bar release and your flights, I mean, we can get all of this out of circles. So once you understand the shape change and the tap, you should be getting into the clear hip drop, master that as he's saying, and then once you master that, you can teach toe on, stalled at the same time. These are very, very similar drops. It's just with the nuance of the straddle, and you don't put your toe on, but these are skills that can be taught at the same time. I mean, how much time? I mean, this is kind of like I don't know, I can give a specific answer of like how much time, but percentage-wise, say you have a 45-minute bar rotation, I mean, 15 minutes at least should be on the basics and every day. And then, I mean, I think the majority of your time really should be spent, I mean, that's part of your basics too, but the majority of time should be spent on developing circles. I mean, I don't know time exactly. I mean, this is nuanced compared to like, what team you're coaching, what environment you're in, what individual. But I mean, so that's kind of like a little bit difficult question to give you a specific answer. But I mean, the majority of your time, once you kind of, I mean, with the caveat and the premise that you have a perfect handstand, you know how to shape change, and you have the floor basics or the bar basics on the floor, back extension, handstand, these things in line. I mean, the majority of your time should be spent on the circles, because again, you can get a turn, a flight, and a single bar release out of just one element.
So I'd say, for level 10 and elite hopefuls, my program, we're running a strap bar every day bar workout. So your dominant circle, you're doing the timers to the clear handstands, the toe handstands, consecutively, and we are always touching base. The very least doing the timers for the other circles. But this is a daily basic in addition to your handstands and your small circles on the regular bar. So we are trying to hit strap bar as much as possible. We're pushing for every day. So especially the small circles, we're doing front giants, back giants as well, but really honing in on minimally 5 consecutive of each of your circles, just to maintain. Once you have all your circles, it's a 2 to 3 minute strap bar circuit. Up until then, it's closer to 5 minutes per athlete, but until you've mastered those circles, what we are trying to push every day to get the timing, to get it, the rhythm with straight arms, to get the rhythm that's going to bounce the bar. You pick the bar up, put it down. There's a difference between getting around and actually doing your small circles to fly out of, to turn out of. There's a big difference there. So we are really focusing on that and training it not to compete, but to use for your bigger skills.
Yeah. And then you kind of made a point. Because sometimes I think in gymnastics we get so caught up in one circle, but then we just do it for the level, right? So we just do the minimum requirement. So let's say for level 6, 7, I just getting into horizontal. I start to get my level 8s or 7/8 to handstand. Bring it to the high bar.
preparation.
And what does that mean?
Yeah. I mean, so physical preparation is strength and flexibility in the static and the dynamic. So in everything we do, like we should be able to hold in the static, hold a position, hold in the static, and then you add movement, right? So, I mean, for circles, I mean, obviously you need all this general physical preparation, being able to stay tight when you're lifting your hands up and down, like staying on the floor flat, being able to just move your arms without moving your body. Controlling head position is huge. If you lead with your head, obviously the body's going to try to catch it, so you want to be able to isolate head position. But ultimately speaking, floor basics, back extension roll, push-up position, shaping there, back extension roll, handstands. I mean, this is just, it simulates being on the bar. When you contact the floor, this is your grip shift when you do your circle. So we need to be thinking about this, and the gymnasts need to understand that. And they need to understand the correlation between at the beginning on how important these things and how, like, whatever we do on the floor, the basics, the conditioning, the flexibility, the warm-up, how that translates directly to our events, regardless of what it is. So those are super important. I mean, obviously, an excellent handstand, and that can be a whole nother conversation, is essential, because we're trying to go from handstand to handstand eventually, right? And then even with, if you're just learning, level 6, whatever, you're just doing 3/4 or like 45 degrees. I mean, it's still like, how do we learn a handstand? We don't load it in a handstand first, right? We do tuck handstand, we do 3/4 handstand, then we kind of increase the load. So the same philosophy would be for the circles. I mean, when we were training, the last elite group I had, we were training, like he's saying, kind of to go back to that point, I had them do 15 circles in a row. I would spot 5 free hip, 5 toe hand, 5 clear, five clear hip, 5 toe hand, 5 staller, and then they would do that by themselves, and they were able to do it. And then once they learned the inside, we cut out the free hip, but they'd always know 3 circles. And this was level 10s and elites that we shot for. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know if I completely answered all of the question, but I'm sure he's got some more for prep. But I mean, bars. I mean, it's a simple recipe. Like the floor work, the snap-ins on the floor, working tons on the straps. It's simple recipe, hard to implement because it takes a lot of time, a lot of patience.
I think there are times where the same but different mentality is really valuable. To challenge the body with the same goal, using different methods, but for the physical prep and the floor lines and the circles, we want to master these shapes and these movements, so we're doing it on a very consistent basis. So the floor lines are a screen for your bar skills. So we're doing floor lines at the beginning of practice every day. That's through the back extension work, like Ryan was saying, we are screening the athlete's ability to even find handstand. So if they're not able to complete those consistently, 2 handstand with straight arms and the appropriate shape, we're not going to find those skills in the bars. So we're screening that little by little each day to prepare them without obsessing over it, and they will get better the more that they're mastering. They're going to build a really good habit, or they're going to build a really bad one, depending on how detailed you're going about your floor lines. So all those circles, I will say 5 is a good standard, especially if you're wanting to fly or turn out of those small circle elements, but I'm pushing for quality over quantity. I think it's better, we're pushing for 2 really solid ones versus 5 ones that we're really struggling through. There's time and a place to struggle through your skills, and there's going to be a learning curve for all new skills, but with these small circle elements and these basics, I'm incrementally adding one at a time to build up those consistent circles. So we are not asking for 5 right away. We're spotting 5, but asking for 2 perfect, or multiple sets of 2, until they can actually build the endurance and the timing to handle it.
And where do you see dismounts going for bars in regards to level 10E dismounts? What should coaches really start to focus on? Should they start doing double A's or full outs, full ins, double Arabians? What should be some of the elements that you think should really kind of be trending towards, and how to develop those specific dismounts?
My philosophy has always been like double hollow. Learn a double hollow first, and spotting obviously, because that teaches you have to tap, and it teaches rotation, and then from there, a really important piece that gymnasts need to understand, and coaches, is what is changing the body shape due to rotation. So we shorten our body, we create rotation, we extend our body, we stop rotation. So I think this is important for dismount. Like we understand, like we know a double hollow, it opens up a way to either we open it up for the double A or we can just twist. So my opinion is like a spotted double out, whenever they start getting nice, just a nice lay. I wouldn't teach a tuck, just a tuck fly away. I would teach a layout. And then from there, you're doing double hollow, spotted. Now, who are they going to? That's why the elite compulsory, you don't have to do like layout stick. You can do double hollows because it's more a progressive element than just learning a double tuck. Because it's easier to go from a double hollow to a double A or full in than it is to go double tuck, double pike, and then try to get it. It's just an easier progression. It takes some time at the beginning. It takes probably more time than you're going to get just a double tuck planned. But if you spend the time learning that double hollow, your skill progression on higher level elements later is going to be much more streamlined. So that's been my philosophy.
Yeah, a couple points on dismounts that I think are critical are to not lose touch with the tap swings and the dismounts without the giants cranking. Now, there's a time and a place for it, compete with it, but always have something to fall back on. The dismounts aren't going to always feel perfect. They're going to feel early. They're going to feel late. There's going to be pulled in. Head positioning, airs. Always maintaining your tap swings and handstand dismounts is super critical. Also, whatever dismount you're doing, and that goes for front too. We're going to maintain for the double fronts, the reverse taps to front layouts, so they have something to go back to. It doesn't necessarily have to be every day for a season level 10 or elite, but it's something that they need to be able to maintain and go back to if needed. It's going to make or break those match blocks and those timing errors that might feel stressful. Something easy to return to build their dismount back up. Also, a lot of the air sense, so anything that they're dismounting should be able to be done off the tunnel track, off the trampoline, pretty easily. Back to land, to loose foam, but we want a lot of reps. So we want those dismounts to be super confident. So when they actually put it on the bar, there's no risk of bailing out of it. They know what they're doing. They know where they are. They know what to spot. They know the timing because they put so many reps off the bar beforehand.
And do you feel like in this generation or time that coaching athletes is easier, harder? And do you feel social media has affected the way athletes train? Or do you feel like throughout the time you guys have been coaching in the different generations or types of athletes that you've had, that there's been a consistency of behavior of how these athletes have been in their training or responding? Or do you feel like gymnastics needs awakening and like to go back to what gymnastics really is supposed to be about?
I think it's different. It's just different, but it's good. I think like, the whole kind of shift in philosophy has forced us to have a smarter pedagogy in regards to how we're teaching, and forcing us to like really look at like the whole person, right? And that's important. That's super important. And I found most recently in the last few years, like the more somebody loves what they're doing, and this is the kind of thing, obviously, the more you love what you're doing, most likely the better you're going to be at it, right? So I think it's really part of like my job as a coach to create that like enjoyment in it and enjoyment in learning. But I mean, of course, gymnastics is hard. And there has to be a level of discipline in gymnastics, right? And as a coach, like, I don't make goals for my athletes. We have a partnership and we figure out the goals together. Okay, here are your goals. Okay, so my job as a coach then is to hold you accountable so you can achieve those goals. Now, unless something's changed. If something's changed, we can have the conversation about the philosophy going forward. But we still have a responsibility as coaches to hold our athletes accountable, but do it in a responsible way. And I think, in the last few years, for good, we have been forced to look at other methods. We've been looking more at science. We've been looking at what other sports are doing. and we kind of catching up with the data stuff, the metric-driven stuff, which is important. Every other sport has this, and I think part of maybe why we don't have it is because, female gymnasts are so young, it's hard to develop research, I think, over the years. But I think more people are getting involved in really trying to figure out the research on the best way to develop athletes physically, but also be cognizant of their mental health, the mental approach, all these things that are just as important for longevity in the sport. So I think it's a good shift. I know, maybe some coaches have a difficult time adjusting, but I think it just, I look at everything like when we need to shift in things with a growth mindset. It's like, okay, well, here's the situation, the context of which we're in. How do we grow from this and get better at this? It's not just like, oh, well, we can't do it now because we can't coach like as strict as we used to. Well, no, it's, we can, but we have to just figure out better ways. So it's helping, I think, the way we're approaching coaching. It's just different. I wouldn't say it's like more difficult or easier. It's just different, and we have to adapt, and we have to get better at what we do. Social media, I mean, it depends on how it's used, but I think most young people have, it's a difficult thing. Like, there's a reason why, kids really shouldn't be on social media until they're in high school. There's research that, this does stuff to the brain, and I think it can be an addictive thing that we need to really be cognizant of and, be able to, manage. So it's a whole nother thing. But, I mean, I think social media can have a very negative impact on athletes because, a lot of gymnasts are perfectionists. So, they may have great performance, and if they're going to look externally to other people's opinions of what they do, that's going to affect their brain somehow negatively. So I think part of our job as coaches, too, is to, hey, you need to, as an athlete, your rubric on how well you do, you need to compare it to your goals and your work ethic and what you're putting into your sport rather than what other people are saying about it.
On the social media point, in terms of how coaches can find value in it, I think the resources, especially recently, are amazing, and there's so many drills, it's endless and it's nonstop, and it's important for the coaches that are looking at all this content to understand these drills should be treated as concepts instead of copy and pasting into your program, is to see the drill, understand the drill, know how to break it down, know how to reduce the skill, what it's actually targeting, and see it in your own facility, in your own program versus copy and paste, because the persistence and the consistency of your program is more valuable than the creativity of these drills. And there's a lot of good content out there, and it's all valuable in a certain way, but it's important to know the difference, know what your program needs versus doesn't need. Instead of just adding every new drill and every new way that you see, you want to see why that works and how that concept is going to solve your problems or solve your athlete's issues, or it's something to wrap your head around versus buy the same exact mats and equipment and do the same exact thing from your athletes. It's going to work sometimes, but they're not going to get as much out of those copy and paste drills as they are with mastering more basic concepts for their own skills.
And there's a lot of good content, but there's a lot of bad content too. So, but when he says why you're doing it, that's the main thing when you're seeing a drill. A lot of high-speed, low-drag drills out there, right? But what are they for? So that's what we have to be asking ourselves. Like, what's the purpose of that drill? If you can't answer that question as a coach, probably shouldn't be using that drill just because it looks cool. I mean, and a lot of drills too, like a lot of things that we do, they're too complex. They can be simplified pretty easily. And I like the self-correcting drills. Simple, like a Cody on trampoline or, a cruise on trampoline. These are self-correcting things. You lift your head, you stop rotation. Simple. Gymnasts can feel it. But I think it's important to ask the question, okay, what's the purpose of the drill? How do I apply it? If we don't know the answer to that, then probably shouldn't use it. If we do know the answer to it, okay, is this a critical drill that I want to be using in my gym or whatever, like he's saying, with the context of what I'm doing? And how can I explain this to the athlete to be able to use it and understand the purpose of that drill as well? So I think there's a couple layers to that. But yeah, so there's good stuff. I mean, you went a little bit different direction with the technical stuff than I did, so that's a super good point, I think. But I think we need to be careful with overloading with drilling. We got to do elements still, right? And I think we got to spin in bars. You got to spot a ton. You got to mold and shape, and you got to be spotting bars. And you got to be progressively spotting bars, meaning like you can't just do everything for them. You got to learn how to when to back off, when to be there, all this stuff. But I mean, purpose is super important, and when you're looking at social media stuff and how to apply the technical, the whatever drills or whatever kind of element, whatever you're doing in the gym.
I'll make one more point about that. And the way I see skill drills is different how I see physical preparation, which we talked about earlier. To me, we're teaching these skills through physical preparation, through their handstand holds, their past handstands, their press handstands, etc. Shape changing, basic, all of the arch. The skill drills are more of a reset button. So we want to do them, but instead of overloading our bar workout or our beam workout with the drills, we want to use those drills to reset, depending on which part of the skill that you're struggling on. If it's the entry, the exit, the stability, whatever it may be, the vision, we want to resort to those drills in response to an error versus, spend half of the workout, if not more, drilling without actually feeling the skill. Because a lot of it is a trial and error thing, and they need to be able to swing through the skill and attempt them versus mastering those skills. There's a lot of drill warriors that are going to master drills and it's going to look really, really good. The application to the skill is the most important part. So we don't want to be caught up mastering the side stations, but we can't put it on the bar or the beam in real competition and high stress. That's when those repetitions really come in handy and they are more valuable than the drill.
No, I think that's a really good point, because I think a lot of times we do get caught up, or I could say I do get caught up in that, where you want to do the busy work, keep them busy, but then it's hard to be like, they don't understand how to take the test, right? Like doing the routine, doing it on the apparatus is almost like taking the quiz or taking the test, or competing it as taking the test, right? And they take the quizzes and doing it on the apparatus, but they do all the homework, right? All the homework is the side drills, all the whatever, and they just can't take the quizzes. Sometimes people are like, hey, I'm bad at taking quizzes, right? Or, hey, I'm bad at taking tests, I'm just a bad competitor. Where you have other people who you see never do the homework, never do this, but yet they can kill it on the events and they can kill it at competitions. That's just their innate nature to be able to do that, right? How do you teach your gym that when you have athletes who are, really talented, who don't really need to be doing all that, but at the same time, how do you teach your coaches a process and to also apply it to the event? Because I think, again, that's the hardest part, is being able to take the homework and apply it to the quiz or the test or the competition or the event, so then they can actually use it for a meaningful purpose.
Yeah, I think holding a standard is important regardless of the talent level. Like, we have a standard work ethic, and this is, because ultimately speaking, like, we do in athletics, but this ends at some point. So we do want to be teaching a strong work ethic, discipline, respect, coachability. These things are important. So regardless of the talent level, we got to hold that standard. In regards to like teaching process, I think the best form of leadership, in my opinion, is leading by example. So if you're teaching coaches, you better be modeling what you want to see out of them. So but as far as like specific process on like, what drills, it's communication, and I think things are always evolving, and I think there should be a concept of like this growth mindset, but always learning. Like, once we think we know everything as a coach, probably should be getting out of the sport, because there's always something to learn, always, and you can be learning something for your staff too. So I think it's a collaboration, holding a standard, and then identifying, like, with experience, you kind of learn a system. A system generally works. It's not going to work maybe for every athlete, but you understand the principles behind the system, and then you can adjust where needed for each and individualize the training for each particular athlete. And it takes a lot of time to understand that and experience to learn that. So it's not just like cookie cutter thing where I can give you a program and then you're just going to apply that into your specific gym or whatever. We have to teach the principles behind everything, like shape changing. What does that do on rotation? that's a simple one. But sometimes gymnasts don't, they know, because if they spin in a chair, they do it all the time as kids, and they know when they open up, they're going to stop. But do they understand that and how that affects their gymnastics? So these kind of things, these principles that kind of we need to teach consistently, but then holding accountable to this, and then identifying the critical progressions. I think of these are the 2-3 things. I think of everything as a puzzle piece. Like a toe handstand, for example, you can break it down to a puzzle piece, and then you can identify kind of the where the deficiencies are within it. So I think that kind of teaching, conversing about best ways, and holding accountability, holding a standard in the gym. I think that's the best way to do it. Without, I don't think you can give you again specific answer on this, because it's an ongoing process. But I think ultimately speaking, if you're head coach in your gym, you're trying to develop a elite program or whatever. You do have to take the helm, but you got to lead that program by example and showing, because when other people see, hey, that's working, well, look at that, they're going to start imitating that, and they're going to start asking questions, and you're going to be able to develop from the ground up that way.
I think especially a lot of less experienced coaches that are trying to build themselves up and just start their career, feel pressure to be creative and impressive versus taking a step back and understanding that the simpler option is usually the right answer. So instead of taking a 5-mat toe full drill, it's going to take a little bit of time. There's a lot more value into kicking up into a 10-second handstand hold, or kicking up into a single arm handstand hold. And as far as getting the staff to back you and have a gym-wide culture that the athletes are going to, whatever you deem important, they're going to deem important. So they're going to be wanting to master the things that you were excited about, that you were wanting them to master. So if holding a handstand is important to you, it's going to be important to them. And over time, if those priorities and those focuses are the same, then you're going to get a more cohesive gym-like culture for those skills and those systems.
And right now, it's currently the Paris Olympics as we're speaking, right? And we're seeing that gymnasts are older, right? We're seeing the best in the world, because 27 right now, right? And her counterparts, her competition, Rebecca Andrade is older and stuff like that. Now, bringing that up, do you feel like because the longevity of gymnasts can be longer, do you feel like coaches can be more patient in their development, even if it affects college? I know they have a certain point typically when they go to college, and you could, I'm sure, go to college later, but do you feel like because there can be their gymnast bodies can last longer with the research and the way that we're training and stuff like that, that the process could be a little bit more, coaches can trust themselves to allow it to be a process. I feel like a lot with elite, before you have to be 16, right?
Yeah.
Well, so you have to have them ready to go so early, and they break down and all this other stuff. So kind of what's your thought process about having gymnasts being able to now be athletes longer?
I think it goes down to our philosophy again. Obviously, it's doable to be older and to have a longer career as a female gymnast. We've seen it. So yes, I think we can be more patient in regards to doing the big elements. But there is something we need to consider. A lot of your basics, a lot of your physical preparation, shaping type stuff should be in place before they start their big growth spurts, things like this. Because if that's in place, I'm not saying they got to do the big elements, but the basic building blocks of the sport. Because if you're able to do that, after you grow, all you have to worry about is one variable, and that's your timing. However, if you have a technical breakdown and stuff before, then you start growing, you have to relearn a lot of things. This is where I think a lot of the mental blocks come into play. Because we do start seeing all that stuff, as they grow, the body changes, And then they worried it's not only timing, now it's timing plus technique. So the more we can do, so essentially, I mean, I think it works with it because we can spend more time on the building blocks, get those in place, and then after they're growing, they're getting, you're able to maybe start the bigger elements a little later. I mean, but again, this is individual based. I mean, you're looking at the Olympics. These are the 0.00001% of athletes, and they're elite of the elite. So it's hard to deconstruct what one person will do and say that's going to work for the mass, the collective. So I think it's yes. I think we need to be more cognizant of being like more patient, but we should be doing that all along. Like we shouldn't be chucking elements they're not ready for, regardless of our timeline, because it's can be not safe. Long-term growth can be stunted. Like long-term technical growth can be stunted, not your physical. But and then what was my other point? And then injury prevention. If we're doing a lot of things before we're ready, obviously, then that just that increases our chances of injury. So, yes, I think it pushes our timeline to the right, and that's okay. But I think we still need to make sure that our technical, basics physical preparation is in place, so that we're minimizing the variables that we have to deal with when we're creating more complex elements and sequences and routines.
And one thing to also add with that is, with college, you see collegiate athletes who had a whole career either go back and try to compete at Olympics after they've had a collegiate career, went elite, did in college, and are just going back to elite, right? And then two, also with COVID, we see a lot of kids take fifth years. We're normally 4 years and you're done unless you're redshirt because of injuries for the most part. It's very rare that I feel like in gymnastics that they get redshirted, coming in as freshmen and stuff like that, or have to build their way to competing. Where other sports like football can redshirt someone and they're there longer, right? Do you feel as though with that, because now it brings it back to more like the masses of the, not necessarily elite in other regards to Olympics elite, but kids who are in college being able to even have their careers last longer with 50 years, and then going back and resurrecting their elite careers?
Yeah, I mean, this is the last year of the fifth years, so we're back to 4. Generally, if a gymnast redshirts, it's not usually due to they got to develop more to get into the lineup. I mean, it can happen, but generally, if there's an injury or something, then they'll have that 5th year. But I mean, yeah, I think ultimately speaking, the stronger, more flexible, better basics that an athlete has, the longer they're going to survive in the sport, the less injuries they're going to have. So again, I always go back to the basic preparation. That's number one. And I don't think you can ever spend too much time on the basics and the physical preparation piece. The more you do that, the more and it's not about volume. It's about, like you said, it's about quality and doing it right. I mean, at some point, yes, in the strategy, there has to be some volume to master something, but it's about mastering the basics. Like anything we do, playing the piano, you got to master the basics to play the concerto, right? So we got to master our basics if we want to be on a top level. And let's get this straight, like girls in college, these are elite athletes. I mean, they're elite. They're elite at what they do. So they didn't get there by just cutting corners, So I think the better we can master basics and be strong and flexible, the less injury we're going to have, the more longevity we're going to have, regardless of what we do.
I think seeing, these athletes compete and dominate at such a later part in their life is really amazing. It's inspiring, but it doesn't, to me, change the process. The process of obtaining skills stays the same. The steps can't be skipped. You should be taking the same exact steps to gain skills regardless of what your goals are. And the program should reflect the goals of the athlete. So depending most part coming to those numbers being in excess. And so they're doing too many versus just enough to keep those skills in moderation. So we want to be able to bend our back. It's safer ultimately when you're moving quickly through the skills. But if we overdo it, there's a chance of it breaking down. And then once it breaks down, it's really, really difficult to bring that back. And you can get around it. It's a harder process. I just think the excessive numbers and the extra, the bridging of the back in particular, will cause you to cut those skills off versus being able to maintain them in smaller quantities.
No, I think sometimes they just stop doing them. It's like, hey, I can do this element now. I don't need to do the basic stuff that got me to where. So, but it's a counterintuitive kind of thing. It's like, well, all this stuff that I built to be able to do that element, and I stopped doing it. At some point, there's going to be a breakdown of the element. It's going to be as good as it was. So I think sometimes they just stop doing some of these things for whatever reason. I mean, I think a lot, like when we're talking about the bridge, we're not supposed to just bend in our back. But I think a lot of times that happens, so we start getting back pain. Well, we're supposed to bend through the shoulders. Yes, there's going to be a bend in the back, but you spread the curve. So I think a lot of times while we have these injuries, yes, numbers can be it. I think it's also a technical thing also that causes the back to hurt on the bridge, because we're talking about that. Vice, well, okay, but where's the coach correcting that shoulder position on the bridge this whole time? Like, because we don't want just one point of angle. We want to spread the curve through the body, right? And if you spread the curve through the body, the load is spread through the body, and you don't have one impingement or whatever, So I think, there can be a number of different reasons, but I think ultimately people stop doing basics as they get older and feel like, well, we don't need it. And I don't think that's a great approach.
Yeah. And to wrap up, what is your why? Why do you do what you do? And you kind of hinted at it a little bit in some of your responses, but for you personally, why do you coach gymnastics?
Me personally, I love the sport and I love everything it teaches about life. I've been doing this I've been in the sport since 5 years old. I had 4 years break when I was in the Marine Corps. But I've learned so much through it that I want to be teaching life skills through my coaching to athletes. Now, in my particular context, as a coach at Georgia, I want to see my athletes get better and better every year in every sphere of life. I think of it as 3 things: academics, athletics, and social life. Develop those three things in your 4 years, and then I want to see them get out in the world in their internships, grad school, or professions, and be way above their peers. That's my passion right now. So yes, of course, I want to win championships. We want to get back to winning conference and national championships. But even more so, I want to see the athletes that I have go and be successful in whatever industry that they're going to be. And then I want to see them in 20 years and be able to be like, hey, awesome job. So that's my why.
Yeah, and same, for as long as I've been in the sport, I'm still impressed and obsessed with the process of learning these skills and the persistence in the character that the sport builds. It creates so much maturity, and these athletes become incredible humans, most importantly. And just being a part of that, using the technical part of it is just really inspiring for me. So I just love to coach it and just see what kind of humans these athletes can become.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this episode. I hope you got some great information that could help you and your program. Again, if you like it, leave a comment, share it, like it, and I'll see you again. Another episode of Heated Conversations. And I'm out.